I read this great book by Kai-Fu Lee, who was the former president of Google China, and now he's a VC over there. And he wrote this book called AI Superpowers. And he basically argues that, China is going to beat the US in AI because they have more data. There's less regulation around what data you can collect. And his basic argument is there's no data like more data. So, you're out there doing these big campaigns for these big companies with 100,000 lists. I may have people on this call listening to this podcast. They have 2,000 people. They got 1,000 people. They got 5,000 people. So if you're dealing with smaller numbers, how do you test?
Well, that's a great point. And what I would also tell you is when you're dealing with smaller numbers, it's really important that you're always focused on list growth. Not because you have a 5,000 person list and you want to get it to 50,000. That's not why you need list growth. You need to focus on list growth and getting new people, more people, correct information, because on an annualized basis, about 20% of your file is going to go bad. Okay, it's going to become undeliverable over the course of 12 months. And if you have a 5,000 name person file and you're going to lose 1,000 of your records, that's not good, right? So you constantly need to be chasing your tail saying, how am I going to add to this list? Right? How am I going to add to this list? But just because your list is small doesn't mean that you can't test, okay? It doesn't mean that you can't split your list in half and still test things. That's fine. You're still going to see reliable metrics. Sure, you have a 500 person name list. It's going to be hard to see reliable metrics by splitting it in half. And that's where you have to use your entire list, right? And you're going to have to remove kind of timing and say, okay, last week I sent out this. This week I'm going to change it and send out this, which one won, because you can't chop up a 500 person list and get reliable metrics. But
What if you have 2,000?
Mhm.
What would be and you want to test 4 subject headlines before you go to the whole list?
Mhm.
And what size would you send the 4 to, and how long would you wait to see which one was the winner?
So when you're dealing with that small a file, you really aren't going to be able to test 4 subject lines. You'll be able to test 2 head to head, because anything
Okay.
below 1,000 names, you're
So
going to
you're
get
saying for a test, minimum 1,000.
absolutely. And
Got it.
obviously, bigger the better, because you're not going to get reliable information. And I would say when you're dealing with that small of a send, I would do the test at least twice before you say to yourself, this is reliable, right? Because there's too many moving parts. So you run the same test multiple times, and then you see, okay, I got something here. Let me move on to the next thing that I want to test. But you can't chop your list up too finely. On the converse side, if you have a huge list, you could do a lot more stuff.